This is False Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm John Buhler, staff writer, fansite.com. I'm joined today by a man who didn't go to a TV show wrap party on Saturday night, didn't feel terrible the next day, and didn't accidentally mistake somebody for his girlfriend twice in the process. Cody Williams, content director, fansite.com. I'm here. How are you?
I mean, I did watch a rap party. It was the Tennessee Volunteers postseason hopes rap party. But no, I missed you on Saturday night. Glad you had a time. I don't know if it was good. I don't know if it was bad, but it was a time for sure. But man, I'm glad you're back. How you doing? How you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling good. Had to take had to take a me day yesterday because
Hmm.
yeah, it was one of those days where like I'm in here and it was a dance club sort of vibe and
Yeah.
I got kind of stuck up into that. Yeah, so one of the colleagues, it was a work party for the Arizona State podcast. Their season of their show is wrapping up. They wrap up. I think it's just they do inventory the next 3 or 4 days, but like it was like the big shebang. And one of her colleagues, his girlfriend looks very similar to mine, and everyone's wearing black. And it was like, and I go over to this girl, I'm like, dude, we're gonna win. And like, what's save her?
Hey, but go dogs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I'm like, it was embarrassing, but yeah. I was watching following along to Georgia, Tennessee on the phone. In the midst of that was not fun, but we did it and we survived.
Hell yeah, you did. I mean, it was, as I said on Saturday night, it was an impressive win for Georgia, and I was, a little sad that you weren't there to celebrate it because I'm sure you would have been in rare form. It would have been a good time.
Uh, I would have sworn I would have done something else and I probably would have thrown up on my keyboard. But, we obviously false started a little bit here, and we're going to go with some Stephen B. Swift's second take. Our delayed reactions to yesterday's AP Top 25 poll. Obviously, I didn't write the three high, three low. I think Quinn Ewers handled that for me
Yeah.
because I'm a bum and this is false start. But yeah, like just looking at this and wondering how it's going to impact the AP top 25 poll. Really, the big key here is Georgia beat Tennessee and then BYU lost to Kansas.
Hmm.
Those are really the two games that will massively shake this up. I'll give you the floor. What do you kind of got? Anything stands out to you?
So I think the one thing that really stands out to me is I can go ahead and tell you that in the college football playoff rankings on Tuesday night that Georgia is not going to be ahead of Ole Miss. Like the college football playoff rankings committee is not going to do that. They're because like that head to head is too fresh, and like I do think that at times we see head to heads, kind of fall by the wayside, but when they're that fresh, when they're teams with the exact same record and you have the head-to-head win, I just don't quite see that happening. So I think Ole Miss and Georgia are probably going to be flipped. I think the other thing that really stood out to me was how much the AP voters were really wanting to drop BYU because dropping down to 14, that's a hell of a drop, especially because like if you're paying attention, yes, Kansas is now only a 4-win team, but like this team is playing better than a 4-win team. Like, and I understand you are what your record says you are in that argument and whatnot, but like the Kansas is not playing like a 4-win team right now. So like I don't know. That just felt like a really precipitous drop to drop them behind Boise State, to drop them, speaking of head-to-heads, dropping them behind SMU, who they beat earlier in the year, but they're forgetting about that one too. So I don't know. It's just I feel like this is going to be the week where the AP doesn't do a good job of really projecting what the college football playoff rankings look like.
And that's going to be reflected here when I put my bracket out here shortly. But yeah, I'm right there with you with BYU. I mean, they kicked down to 14. I'm like, yeah, Kansas is not a good loss on paper, but this is not the same Kansas team we
Yeah.
saw at the beginning of the year. I did kind of feel Miami was a little bit low at 11, and I feel
Mhm.
Tulane is a little bit low at 20. I feel Tulane, I think, to be honest with you, I feel like if Tulane played Army, which they're going to,
Yeah.
and if they play Boise, they might actually win. I mean, it's John Summerall's a wunderkid. He is just one hell of a coach. It's unbelievable what that man is doing. And
No, I like the Tulane point because I mean I talked about Tulane on Saturday night too. Like this is a team that is hitting its stride. I do like you mentioned the idea like it's not going to happen, but like if they were to play Boise State, that game would be off the freaking rails because neither I don't like either of these defenses. Like Tulane's defense is a little suspect. I think shutting out Navy had more to do with Horvath going out, but you look at Boise State and like they were giving up plenty of yards, plenty of points to San Jose State. They've been giving up plenty of points to a lot of teams. They've just been outscoring them. And so like it's going that would be a off the rails kind of game.
It'd be wild. And then I would say like too high, like again, like Penn State and Notre Dame. I'm just like I've got thoughts about them for days, and they're kind of replaced the BYU who replaced Miami, where it's like, I'm just kind of tired of this. Like, can we
Yeah.
just like this is artificially inflated? Everybody clearly seems to understand that, except if you're in the Midwest, but like that's kind of what that is. And then also I feel Tennessee is too high at 10. Like, I feel
Mhm.
kind of like we'll talk about them. I'll talk about them more. That's a team of a lot of consequence here, but the Arkansas loss is not looking good.
No, it's
And
not.
so there's just that was like my initial reaction. Like, I'm gonna write this down in real time. That could be completely wrong and everything like that. But that's probably what I would have said in my article around. And Tennessee fans would have, screenshotted me every call that went against their way. I'm like, yeah, well, you scored 7 points in the second half, so kiss my ass.
Yeah, I'm gonna refrain from saying anything about the Tennessee fans. I have some thoughts. But anyway, yeah, I think that 10 at 10 for Tennessee is just a little high because it's not so much that the Arkansas loss looks worse. It does, but like I still think that the committee knows what this Arkansas team is and the AP voters know what this Arkansas team is. Like, yes, their record's not going to be great. They may or may not make a bowl game. That's still in question, but like this is also a team that played Texas really close this week. They played a lot of good teams relatively closely and obviously picked up the win against Tennessee. So I do think that Arkansas is not going to be held against them. The thing that stands out to me with Tennessee is the lack of quality wins. Like we talked about it
Yeah,
with why this game was so important for Georgia because it was basically okay, your biggest games of the season, you have five of them ostensibly,
you're three and
and
two.
yeah, now you're 3-2. If you lost, you'd be 2-3, and like that would be hard. Like if you're under 500 in those games, then maybe you don't deserve to be in the playoff, even if they are hard, like tough games. You didn't go above 500, so how can you say you're a high quality team? For Tennessee, they have two high quality games that they have on their schedule that they played to this point. And that was Alabama, which they won, and now they've lost to Georgia by double digits. And then you throw in the Arkansas loss with the lack of quality wins that they have. That's why I think Tennessee's being a little overinflated here.
And then if you beat Vanderbilt, it's like a double-edged sword. It's like that's another one that probably like crosses out Arkansas, but at the same time, Vanderbilt may only be a 6-win team, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. No, we still love the Doors. There's no doubt about it.
So that was pretty good. I feel like I don't know if I got really much more to unpack there. I think we got a lot more to unpack here
I'm
with
I'm hold on before we get to the playoffs. I just got to we got to
yes.
celebrate two things. One, first, Kansas State and Missouri out of the top 25. It's what we wanted. We've been saying it for weeks. It's finally happened. The results played themselves out. We love to see it. Also, shouts to Kenny D, our boy, getting the
Yes.
Arizona State Sun Devils back into the top 25. That's awesome.
Kenny D, Kenny Z. Does this look like a bowl team? This looks like a team that might be doing some bid stealing potentially. We'll
Yeah, 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 yeah.
talk about them here in a little bit too. But yeah, it was really cool to see what Arizona State's won like 8 games like combined in the last 3 years, and
I
they just won
know,
eight.
dude. It's
It's
unreal.
yeah, hell a day for the Arizona State podcast. Forks
Love to
up.
see it. Forks up.
Speaking of Arizona State playoffs, you kidding me? That was good.
I love that.
My gosh. But I'm gonna try to like maybe you have a more level headed with this because I tried doing this. I spent hours yesterday, semi bedridden, trying to figure this out. Um, my top 12, I'm just gonna wing it, man. Like it's not it's gonna be a time, but maybe it's a little bit easier and clearer for you. This is the hardest one yet for me.
No, this was so like I don't have anything crazy. That doesn't mean it wasn't difficult to like try and figure out. Particularly like I had a real hard time, I think 6 through 11 is where I really struggled to try to figure out like for me I think it was probably more clear or clearer. Sorry, grammar not working well before or at 8 a.m. in Mountain Time. But I think it was clear what teams needed to be in there. I think where those teams are slotted in was not the easiest task in the world.
That is true. So I'm gonna have you start, and
Okay.
yes. I would assume we both probably have Oregon at one.
Yeah, I mean, like the Wisconsin game was ugly. I voiced my doubts about the Big Ten's national title prospects, but at the end of the day, like team's 10-0. Team has the win over Ohio State. The team has not slipped up to this point. They have a win over Boise State. I feel like we're not mentioning that as a quality win, but they do have a win over Boise State. So like there's no reason to not have Oregon at one at this point.
No. Number two, there's some discussion to be had there, and that's kind of where I'm leaning. Who do you have it to?
I still have Texas. And for me, it is I think that one of the things that is becoming clearer to me, and maybe it's just a construct of the SEC, but I've said all year that I think Alabama is one of the higher variance teams in the country. I think all of the best teams in the SEC might just be high variance. You look at the best and worst of Georgia, pretty damn high variance. You look at the best and worst of Texas, pretty damn high variance. And so like, and with Texas, I think it really comes down to my boy Quinn Ewers and like what he looks like game to game. When you look like we've seen games where he's been phenomenal. We've also seen games like the Arkansas game where he was frankly the reason that they only won by 10 points. So like they're a lot higher variance team, but I do think at their best they have the talent, particularly on defense. This defense is still damn good. And I think the ceiling on offense is high enough that they can beat anyone in the SEC. And considering they control their own destiny, I'm gonna need to see them get beaten for me to like fully buy into that.
That's fair. Do you want me to drive this in the ditch, or do you want me to keep it on the right street? What do you want me to do? Because I go either direction.
Let's keep like half the car in the ditch. Let's just like ride along in it.
That doesn't really solve anything. Okay, so we got to figure it out. So right this instant, I am going to put Texas at two. I nearly put Alabama at two. That
Yeah.
was really the big thing. I came across Andy Staples's article, my hero in the sport, your my Bud Elliott, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
And in his rankings, he didn't even have Texas in there because he thinks that A&M is going to beat them and that A&M would lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game. I initially I put Texas in at two because like they're the only one loss team in the SEC outside of getting smoked by Georgia. They've handled business. I'm very dubious of Texas winning the SEC at this point, but
Hmm.
right now, like I gotta the Arkansas game was didn't do a lot for me, even though there's a rivalry game. Right this instant, because I don't want to be tinfoil hatting it, I have to put Texas at two, even though I really don't want to.
I think that's fair. I do think that the rivalry component of that game at Arkansas does weigh somewhat in my mind because to me, that's a game where Texas is trying to get out of Dodge. They know that A&M's the only game that actually truly like has consequence for their college football playoff hopes at this point. Yeah, you can't lose to Arkansas, but you also like you don't need style points in that game. You don't need to, unload the chamber on Arkansas. Arkansas was trying to unload the chamber. That game clearly meant more to Arkansas than it did to Texas. And so like and with it being in Fayetteville, I'm going like that's why I'm trying not to overreact to the week to week results. And I think like, speaking of Bud Elliott, speaking of guys we like, I think we're both big Tom Fornelli fans. And he
Yes.
said something on the X earlier or this weekend, excuse me, and it's been rattling around in my head. We talk about all these teams of BYU or Indiana and all that, and like, well, do they really deserve to be here? Who have they played? Are they like kind of getting lucky to get into these spots? The beautiful thing about a 12 game regular season is if you've been lucky, there's a chance that out of those 12 games, you're going to lose one. You're eventually going to get got. And so like if Texas is not as good as people say they are, they're going to get got. But like as of right now, they have not gotten got, and so maybe they're just better than we're giving them credit for.
I think that's fair. I think they're going to get got, but
Yeah,
that's how it's going
absolutely.
to
I mean,
go.
it's entirely in the cards.
So at three, I think there's about three teams you could consider for three. Who do you have at three?
At three, I have SMU because I like the Boston College game was not impressive. SMU played badly. They played quite poorly, particularly on defense, which this defense has been quite good for the past 2 years. So I didn't quite see that coming. I do wonder if the quarterback change for Boston College really hurt SMU in that game. So I'm wait and see. I'm less confident that SMU can beat Miami after that game for sure, but like I do think that I still would favor SMU to be able to really cause that Miami defense some problems.
I think that's fair. Again, I'm completely redoing mine on the fly because this is just wrong. But wait, so you see it. Okay, we're gonna do this. Just getting out ahead of here. It's like that meme of the guys like, this is what happens when you use your credit card to finance your life and the train, moving the tracks and stuff. That's what this is.
Yeah.
This is the fourth one I'm trying to do here. At three, I've got Miami. I feel like right now, as much as I want to put SMU in there, at the end of the day, I just think that Cam Ward is just a little bit better than Kevin Jennings. I think there's just a little bit more talent. And that gets them that win in Charlotte when they face each other. And
Yeah.
that was kind of my thought here. We may be on the same vein with four. Who do you have at four?
That's Colorado Buffaloes, baby. Go Coach
Yeah.
Prime. It's all day. Like I said, going like we both picked Kansas to win at BYU, and they did it. And I think that BYU is still a very good team, but this Colorado team is hitting a gear that I frankly didn't know they had. Like in that, like looking back at that Utah game, they didn't play like that well. Shador turned the ball over. Shador had some like really poor decisions early in that game, and they still blew Utah out. Like it was not a close game. It never felt in doubt. And part of that is Isaac Wilson, no doubt about it. But like another part of it is Colorado just like leveling up to a degree that I don't think we saw. And like right now, it feels like as we, head towards the Big 12 championship game, which as of right now would be BYU versus Colorado still, it feels like BYU is kind of trying to keep the duct tape, like, keep it together with duct tape, whereas Colorado is a fully formed beast right now.
Totally. Yeah, I feel Colorado is here we go. My new top 12. It's looking so good right now. Please tell me I didn't send that to you. Yeah, the game I watched the most of this past weekend was Colorado Utah. That was the game that I had on there. Colorado's like, yeah, we didn't even play that great. I'm like, you look fantastic. Like Travis Hunter pretty much won the Heisman with how
Hmm.
well he played and a huge rivalry game for both schools. Utah is like, oh yeah, we're gonna move on from Kyle Whittingham. It's gonna be Morgan Scalley. And at that point, I'm like, I think you need to reset because it's
Yeah.
like what you did in the Pac-12 is not going to work in the new Big 12. And Colorado just looks like so much fun. They're getting so many people involved. And I think honestly having Warren Sapp on the staff's made a huge difference.
Oh yeah.
Pass rush looks really good. I don't know if it's quite to the level of like South Carolina, but it's definitely one of the top five in the country. It's really good.
No, 100%. Also, it kills me that Warren Sapp just has like the biggest chaw in the entire world on the sidelines every single time. Like they cut to him and he's just got like a huge packed chaw right there.
Yes, he does. So, and then you have Boise State as the group of five, right?
Yeah,
And
still. I mean, it's looking, I'm less confident in it because Tulane has looked as good as they have. Army has looked as good as they have all season. So, like, I'm definitely not saying it's a lock at this point, but, you know, they're still the king until they're not, as in terms of the G5.
and you've got them slotted at 12, correct?
Yeah. Yeah,
Same.
I do.
Okay. Five. We might have the same team for five. Who do you have at five?
I think it's Ohio State.
Yeah.
And again, like, expressed my lack of overall confidence in what Ohio State can potentially accomplish this season with Will Howard. But as of right now, like they're almost a double digit, maybe a double digit by this point, favorite over Indiana this coming week, which is obviously a big game that we're going to spend some oxygen on throughout the week. But I also think that if they win that game, if they beat Michigan, which they should, then we're in a spot where, okay, your two losses are to Oregon, but like if it's another close loss, can you really hold that much against them? Like that's two high quality losses. You lost twice to the number one seed. Like no other team in the country really has that resume, especially with the wins over Penn State and then potentially Indiana.
For sure. Yeah. I've got Ohio State at five. They control their own destiny. If they beat Indiana and don't screw up versus Michigan, they're going to be playing Oregon and Indianapolis for presumably the number one seed. I don't know if they're going to beat Oregon, but they're right there. I feel like of any team that's not projected to win its league, that's kind of been the most steady, I would say. And I think I will give Ohio State credit for that. We couldn't figure them out for a while. I mean, maybe they're just steady with
Yeah.
a not so steady dude at quarterback, which is great.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good way to put it. I think the talent level is just so high on both sides of the ball. Like when you talk about the skill position players, when you talk about the defensive front and the guys in the secondary, a lot of these guys are going to be really high draft picks. Will Howard is not. And I think
No.
like the Will Howard factor maybe lowers the ceiling. And that's why I talk about them in terms of winning a national championship. A lot of times to win a national championship, you need to have the highest ceiling and you need to play to that ceiling. And I'm not sure Ohio State has that ceiling. And I think the Oregon game, when you go back to it, is a really good indication of that because I don't think Oregon even played their A plus game in that game. And they still were just a little bit better than Ohio State because I think Ohio State played pretty damn well in that game for what Ohio State is.
Oh, totally. Six, we may disagree. Who do you have at six?
Six, I'm going with Penn State, and I don't want to. I think they're trash, but like I don't like. I just don't see it happening, quite frankly. Like I think like if they went out and go 11-1, they're going to be way higher than we think they should be, and that's just like it's not what I agree with. It's just what's going to happen.
God, that sucks. But yes, that's fine too. And with what I've had on here is not actually going to happen. I have Penn State coming up just a little bit. I've got Alabama at six, which is
Okay.
with Alabama at six and Texas at two. That's kind of impossible at this point. Just I don't really know how. I don't think that that's a way you could eventually do it. But I just feel like Alabama's high is could just compete and punch up with anybody else. I mean,
Oh yeah.
the Tennessee loss and the Vanderbilt losses aren't looking particularly good, but like Georgia win looks really good. The LSU win looks really good, and we'll see what
Yeah.
happens. And against cannon fodder in Oklahoma and Auburn. So I kind of feel that Alabama just, I feel like they're kind of in Ole Miss and Georgia's head. I feel like that's
Mhm.
kind of where I've got them ahead of them. And that's really how they've been reflected in the rankings up to this point. So I've got them at six and I have Penn State at seven.
Okay, and I have it flipped. I have Alabama at seven, and kind of what for the reason you mentioned. Like, as of right now, Texas is still the favorite to win the SEC. So, like, I'm still going to project them to beat Alabama in the SEC championship game. Alabama, literally, if they beat the two teams on the left on the schedule, which you mentioned, Oklahoma on the road and then at home for Auburn. Like, if they win those two games, the Tennessee loss basically locks them into the AC or to the SEC championship, no matter who wins Texas A&M. Alabama
Right.
will own the tiebreaker over whoever the loser is there. So they're sitting pretty right now.
Yeah, it's like Texas, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Georgia are really only the four teams that can get to Atlanta. Ole Miss doesn't get in for probably the Kentucky loss probably is what hurts them. I think you probably have a better understanding of why that is.
So I believe the tiebreaker that would end up determining that would be uh I think it's win percentage versus common conference opponents, and the
Okay.
Kentucky game will obviously hurt them in that one.
Okay, that makes sense. And then at eight, I have Ole Miss. I have Ole Miss at eight. I kind of feel like the Georgia one's really good. The LSU loss stings. The Kentucky loss is awful, but like there's other opportunities out there. You win Florida, that'll be good. You beat Mississippi State. I just kind of feel that like Ole Miss again, Ole Miss looked phenomenal in the non-conference.
Mhm.
Again, even the Wake was terrible. They still scheduled somebody in the Power Four. Like you
Yeah.
can't like, and when Wake was probably good at that point too. So I just kind of feel that Ole Miss's talent belongs in the playoff, and the head-to-head over Georgia matters now. That may change later, but like for the time being, I have a hard time seeing Ole Miss at 10-2 not making it.
No, I'm with you. I do have Ole Miss in, but at eight, I have Notre Dame. And again, it's the Penn State corollary. I don't see them losing again. Do I think they're the eighth best team in the country? No, I don't. But like again, if we keep playing this out, that's where they're going to end up because the Army win is going to go down as a quality win. So like you have the Texas A&M win, you have the Army win, Navy win, obviously looking less credible, but still. And then there's a chance if USC can win this week that like that's another bowl team. Like at least USC can give them that if they beat USC in the final week of the regular season.
Watched way too much of USC Nebraska this weekend. That was painful.
Infuriating. One of the worst, like you could just it was like which team wants it less? Like that's what that game felt like.
Yeah, it was like, it was like watching the Falcons play the Falcons instead of just getting just shelled by the Broncos. Denver's gonna make the playoffs. I feel pretty confident about that. They've got a really good offensive line. Bo Nix,
Mhm.
I know the biggest hitter of all time with him. it just kind of works. And yeah,
Sean Payton's a damn good coach. He's a douche, but like he's a good
that
coach.
he is. I have Notre Dame at 9. Again, it's the same sort of corollary.
Okay.
And I will say this with Penn State and Notre Dame: if they lose again, they're both out and they're not coming
Oh yeah.
back in. They're not being invited to my birthday party.
No.
And the thing is, we'll talk about that. They both have very losable games this week. Penn State's got to go to Minnesota. And then obviously, I think the game of consequence, which will be coming to you after Live with 3 Yards of Cloud Upon, I think it's got to be Notre Dame Army at this point. I don't think there's not a really great
Oh
late
yeah.
game.
No, there's really not. No, like I'm hella excited for that because I think Army has and is better than Navy. So like I do think it's not going to be the
Army, yeah, Army Notre Dame. I keep saying Navy Notre Dame, whatever. It's Monday.
well, they've already played. So like it's not like it's a game that hasn't happened that we haven't talked about. So it's totally fine. But like yeah, like I think Army's been better than Navy. I think Army is better than Navy and like I expect it to be a more competitive game than what we saw when Notre Dame and Navy played.
Yes. Did you say you're 9 yet?
My nine's Ole Miss. So we have those like we have 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 flipped. But like I have Ole Miss there. And I honestly I debated on 8 and 9 where to put Ole Miss. Like I debated these two quite a bit. Um, I just ultimately landed on it's way funnier if Ole Miss goes into South Bend and beats Notre Dame. So that's kind of what I want to see.
We probably have the same two teams for 10 and 11 now that I'm thinking about it, maybe in a
Yeah.
different order, but I've got Georgia at 10. And
Okay.
I kind of feel that like nobody's played a schedule like them. It's maybe Florida, and Florida's like going to probably go to a bowl game now if they beat FSU. I mean, they could also potentially beat Ole Miss. I mean, I don't think that that's possible. I mean, it's with LSU losing, I think anything's possible here. I just kind of feel with Georgia being 3-2 with those 5 games of consequence, like
Yeah.
no one's more battle tested. It was also nice to see from a phone Carson Beck play his best game of the season when it required it. More
Hmm.
importantly, you got to get rid of Bobo, start something else, and you figure out, okay, the problem is like if you do that, you'll lose Stockton because that's his guy. So maybe at
Hmm.
that point you get some guy for Rashada
Yeah. No, I have
or
Georgia at
Montgomery.
11.
Yeah,
I have Georgia at 11. And you're right. Like when we talk about the resumes of these teams, no one has the gauntlet that Georgia has gone through. Alabama's probably the closest, I would
yeah,
probably say. And like they basically done the same things in those gauntlets. Alabama just happens to have a head-to-head win over Georgia. But like I do think that again, the 3-2 in this 5 quality games is a huge feather in the cap of the Bulldogs. And also like I don't care what seed they are. If they're in, they're alive to win a national championship. And like I don't like legitimately like do you think Kirby Smart cares what seed Georgia is as long as they're in the playoff? I don't think he gives a rat's ass, quite frankly.
I think a lot of people are going to show up to Happy Valley wearing red. So I'll just tell them
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
and my team at 11 wears red, which is Indiana, who I believe you have at 10.
I do have them at 10. Yeah, because like I literally I think that if if I'm not mistaken, I was looking at the ESPN FBI playoff predictor yesterday. I think they're at 97% at this point. So
Yeah.
like that and that's most likely with the Ohio State loss baked into that. Like that 3% is the 3% chance they lose to Purdue in the season
Yes.
finale. And so
Right.
like as long as they don't get blown off the field against Ohio State, which I have a really hard time seeing happening, given again what I've said about Ohio State, but also just the faith I have in Indiana to be able to do stuff, to be able to find effectiveness against Ohio State. Like, I think at the end of the day, like, as long as you don't lose by like 50 points to Ohio State, you're in the playoff if you're Indiana.
Yes, I believe they're one of Georgia's like 92%. There's about 3 or 4 that have higher than that. I believe it's Oregon. I believe it's Ohio State, Texas, and Indiana are way up there too, if I'm not mistaken, with FPI. Doing the math, and the math doesn't math sometimes. And again, it doesn't technically work because I think like BYU still got the best chance to win the Big 12, and that's sub like 40% or something wild. But
Yeah.
so yeah, we got our 12 teams here. I feel pretty good about that. First 4 out, I'll rattle mine off real quickly. I've got SMU at 13, Tennessee 14, Texas A&M 15, BYU 16.
Okay, so literally the same teams, except we obviously have the ACC championship flipped. So I have Tennessee at 13, Miami at 14, BYU at 15, A&M at 16. So like it's close.
It's close, yeah. I nearly went with the Andy Staples bracket. I'm like, this is wild, and that gets Tennessee in. Brad McMurphy probably had the best one that I saw. Like, okay, this is actually kind of what I want to do. Because initially I'm like, okay, am I really gonna put BYU at 4? I don't want to put BYU at 4. And I was
No.
like, no. But it was crazy. So we're making hella good time here. So let's
Yeah.
share our 12 and first four out and move on.
I will say before I share my 12, it is noteworthy, despite what the FPI says on FanDuel, on DraftKings, wherever you look, Colorado is the current favorite to win the Big 12. So
Yeah.
we are with the odds makers on that one, which I would rather be with the odds makers than the FPI playoff predictor, quite frankly, because the odds makers, they make their money for a reason.
Yes, they do. That's what they do. So I'll go first.
Okay.
And okay. My four first round buys are Oregon winning the Big Ten, Texas winning the SEC, Miami winning the ACC, and Colorado winning the Big 12. 5-12 would be Ohio State hosting Mountain West Group of Five champion Boise State. 6-11 would be Alabama hosting Indiana. Signetti going back to Alabama. That'd be crazy.
I would love that. Hell
Like
yes.
like a week later, it would have been a week ago. It was like, okay, Alabama going to Bloomington. Now it's kind of flipped.
Yeah.
7-10, 7-10. I've got Penn State hosting Georgia, and James Franklin's going to lose that game.
Oh
And
yeah.
then I've got Ole Miss, Notre Dame. Notre Dame going to Ole Miss. Oh my God, that's gonna be awesome. So that's what I got
Uh,
8-9.
they won't know what to do in the Grove, man.
Just get Irish car bomb to go in there. But yeah, and then my first four out are SMU, my ACC runner-up Tennessee, Texas A&M, and then BYU as the Big 12 runner-up.
All right. And so I have in my top four, one Oregon, two Texas, three SMU beating Miami in the ACC championship game, four Colorado winning the Big 12. Again, the 5-12 Ohio State hosting Boise State. I have the same matchups as you. They're just different seeds, and Notre Dame is hosting Ole Miss in the 8-9 game. But I have Penn State hosting Georgia in the 6-11 game, Alabama hosting Indiana in the 7-10 game, and then as I said, 8 Notre Dame hosting number 9 Ole Miss. First four out: Tennessee, Miami, BYU, and Texas A&M.
Oh yeah. That was amazing. We made pretty good time on that, and hopefully
Hell
make
yeah.
good time on this next segment with a combined venture of he gone and it's getting hot in here. So we had two coaches that got fired over the weekend and two coordinators of note that are out. And then
Hmm.
we'll obviously finish the segment with, five hottest seats in college football here. So Mike New is out at Ball State. He got
Hmm.
fired from his alma mater. And then Stan Drayton is out at Temple, and he got fired after winning in overtime over Florida Atlantic and just uh, Court of Owls, if you will.
Yes, not the best stuff. I mean, I think this is kind of what you had to do in both programs. Ball State has really fallen behind the eight ball in terms of the MAC. Like they're just not as competitive as they frankly should be. Like Ball State's a pretty damn good program. We've seen them pop a lot over the past few years even, and it just felt like Mike New wasn't necessarily elevating in the way that Ball State potentially can, or like we weren't even trending towards a pop year, and like that's kind of a problem if you're at a MAC school. With Temple, like it just feels like this program's been really listless since
Matt
I don't
Rule
want
with
to
Jeff
say Matt.
Collins.
Yeah, like the first few years of Jeff Collins, like that. I think like since then it's just kind of been trending down, and part of that is probably some infrastructure that Jeff Collins laid, knowing what I know about Jeff Collins. But like I do think that like I think they need to bring someone in, and I don't know who this would be off the top of my head, but someone in who can just like really start laying an infrastructure and who they're going to give time to lay an infrastructure. Because I think Temple is a job that has a high potential. We've seen it, but also think that the thing about Temple is you have to have the right processes in place to get there, and I don't think those are in place right now.
It could potentially be one of the coaches who was fired previously. I'd look at Mike Houston, I'd look at Mike Bloomgren. I think those are kind of
Mm,
guys that would
yeah,
do really well there. Because Temple, it's like you've got the talent there, you've got the infrastructure, you can win there. It's just a high variance program and it can go bad very quickly.
yeah.
With Ball State, it's like you're absolutely right. They're not the cream of the crop of the MAC. Those programs historically are Toledo, Miami, Ohio, and Bowling Green. Those are the ones that kind of dominate, but
Mhm.
they're not at the bottom. They're not at the bottom with Akron. They're not at the bottom with Kent State.
Yeah.
They're somewhere in the middle where like you see the Ohio U's of the world, or you see Buffalo doing well. Like
Mhm.
that's Western Michigan. You're kind of in that range.
Yeah. No, you absolutely are. And like I think the big key in what's been beneficial to Ball State over the years, and granted, the college football landscape has changed somewhat, but they also were able to succeed despite this in the early 2020s, which I think is Ball State has always been a program that thrives on keeping guys in the building who maybe like aren't that attractive in the outside, portal world or whatever, don't really like have an avenue to move up, but they develop those guys and they get them ready to play as a team in good college football. And like that's kind of been what they're doing. And like as of right now, that's just not there. They're not developing these guys at the way that we saw, or at least knew wasn't. And so like hopefully you can get back to that. Like I do think like Ball State is a program that could start to turn this around like in the next 2 years because like you get a coach who knows how to do that properly and you're in a good spot.
Follow me on this before you asked. Talking on two coordinators that got let go. This is hilarious. Why don't you just get Ball State alum Joey Molinaro to basically go in there and imitate Nick Saban and just coach,
That would be incredible. Holy God.
and have David Letterman be like the big booster for them too? Because you know, with the other big booster boosting them up, we'll just leave it at that.
You certainly do not. No, no, no more on him though.
No, no. And no more on Phil Longo as the offensive coordinator there at Wisconsin, and no more for Matt Camponi as the defensive coordinator at North Texas. These programs are at a very interesting but similar spot. I'll let you touch more on Wisconsin. You're higher on them. Obviously, Phil Longo was the OC under Mac Brown, North Carolina, to great success. But like, this was the apprehension I had about going air raid at a place like Wisconsin. Takes away from your identity. Maybe you go a bit more pro style, but like again, you lose what Tyler Van Dyke for the season, and
Yeah.
Braden Locke's out there trying the best he can. Maybe it's just as maybe they just kind of scapegoated it a little bit with Phil Longo because there's a chance Wisconsin may not go to a bowl game now.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely is a scapegoat situation. Like, had Tyler Van Dyke been healthy through the entire season, like I think that could have really changed the calculus for what Wisconsin was going to be this season. Like, again, I don't want to like crap on Braden Locke because the dude's trying. Dude almost knocked off Oregon this week. So, like, definitely not the week to crap on him. But, like, the offense was also not good in that game. Like, they scored 13 points. So, like, I do think that it is a little bit of scapegoating. Like, some Fickle had to make a change to, like, show that things are progressing in the right way. And, like, I think Phil Longo is a good offensive coordinator. He's not a great offensive coordinator. So, like, I don't think this is like, a detrimental to the program type of loss. And I think if you're going to scapegoat someone, if you're Luke Fickle, it does make a lot of sense to make it Phil Longo because even though he's good, good is replacement level in the college football world. So like you get another coordinator of that ilk who's going to be available. It's not going to be that hard. So like I don't think it's something long term that I'm concerned for, but I can also tell you that Phil Longo is going to get another job this offseason. Guarantee it. I guarantee it.
Yes, and I'll probably do well with that. Wisconsin with my OC, that would actually probably work very good with you with Mike Bobo in
Honestly,
Wisconsin.
yeah, that I actually kind of like that. Mike Bobo is a Big Ten offensive coordinator masquerading as an SEC offensive coordinator.
You know, he's just what is it? Chris Ballard's got a thick accent too. You know, go up there in the Midwest and but you're actually good at your job. Or I mean, I think you called a pretty good game, even though Carson Beck, I think, just drove the car. But
Well, so my personal hero Bud Elliott put it a really good way. One of the big things that stood out to me, yes, Carson Beck played phenomenally and like the best that we've seen him play in a month or more, quite frankly. But the offensive line also played the best they have in a month or more, which really affects what Carson Beck's doing. And when Carson Beck's not getting touched, Tennessee didn't have a sack in this game. Tennessee, I think, had one quarterback hit the entire game. You can call just about anything if Carson Beck's gonna be able to sit back there and not have to worry about pressure in his face. Like I think Carson Beck and that offensive line made Mike Bobo look a lot better than Mike Bobo is.
again, the Tate Ratledge injury is so that's the most impactful
Yeah,
one of anything in the entire maybe the SEC this year. I feel like that one's just like if he was healthy and playing like up to his standard, I mean, yeah, that's you've got Taylor Lewan there, Taylor Lewan's half brother at the offensive interior.
that's right.
And we're going to talk a little bit about Matt Camponi, the defensive coordinator that got fired at North Texas. There was a moment there where I thought North Texas might win the American. They've been about 4 or 5 wins for a while now. Eric Morris I remember this, he was at Incarnate Ward. I believe he was the head coach for Cam Ward there. He was at Wazoo. He took over and he got hired. I believe the same like week that like his mentor Mike Leach passed away. So it was very
Hmm.
sentimental. He replaced Seth Luttrell, sort of an offensive minded sort of thing. And I'm watching the game for the Paul Tyson fight. I've got some thoughts about that as well. And the Road Riders just had their way with North Texas, and they just couldn't keep pace. And this felt like it's like a scapegoat thing. Off the top of my head, I looked at what North Texas did their schedule. I'm like, there's not really a quality win to be had. And this is again to save face. I don't think they're going to move on from Eric Morris after a 5-7 season, but like that's what he went last year. Like
Yeah.
that's what you've been under Seth Luttrell outside of 1 year. And you're like, okay, maybe this is just what the program is. But at the same time, I'm like, I think people there care a little bit more. I think there's a little bit better resources and infrastructure for you to make some noise in the American because you briefly were and now you're not.
I think this is less of a scapegoat situation. Like I understand what you're saying, and I don't think you're necessarily wrong, but I also think this North Texas defense is trash. So like it's to me, it's more of a what is it you'd say you do here situation because Matt Camponi, I don't know what you've been doing here because if North Texas even had like an average defense, this team's easily bowling right now. This offense has been really good for most of the season. And like, granted, that is kind of the North Texas brand of football. That's what it was under Luttrell. That's what it's been early under Morris. So like, I do understand that component of it, but at the same time, like, you got to show a pulse defensively, and this team really hasn't done that a whole lot this year.
Yeah, man. You know what's the best part? None of us are getting like the sun blasted in our eyes right now. It's just so
That's right.
great.
I'm very happy to be able to see the computer screen again.
Dude, it's so cool. But yes, that's kind of what we got there with North Texas. Now let's do like it's getting hot in here with our five hottest seats in college football. I had a much easier time with this than I did with the playoff rankings. So, hottest seat for me in college football right now is Ryan Walters at Purdue. That thing's cooked. There's no way he survives.
So I have Ryan Walters as my two, and I'm right there with you. It's 1A and 1B. It's not really two. Like Ryan Walter, like this is it's not that Purdue, again, I've said this before, is a tough job. Like you have to basically scheme your way over a talented disadvantage that you're going to be at every single year. But you're getting worse. And like that's where I look at Ryan Walters and I'm like, you're worse than you were. Like, I don't know. It's just not it's not there for me. Number one, I have Trent Dilfer. And
Yes.
it's this just isn't working. It was gimmicky to begin with. You're trying to do like Coach Prime diet and it's just not there. Like you don't have the same pull, you don't have the same cachet. It's not the same thing.
I do not have any G5 head coaches in there, but yeah, if I would have, he would have been way up there. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at here. Number two, I've got Neil Brown at West Virginia. I feel
Mm.
that the Indiana acted swiftly to give Kurt Sigourney that money because he would have made alma mater really good.
Oh
And
yeah.
Neil Brown's making not his alma mater really mid. And then you've also got the Jimbo Fisher sort of component out there. Look, with the Big 12 now being a little more nationwide and you have a regional rival there in Cincinnati, you're not at the most geographical disadvantage. That would be UCF, who I'll talk about here in a second. I just kind of feel that like West Virginia, it's like enough's enough. Like we can be more than a 6-win team. Losing to Baylor, again, Dave Aranda is safe. His
Yeah.
AD took him off the hot seat, which he should. The quarterback thing didn't
Yeah.
work. They've been playing a lot better football in conference play. That's what you want to see. But Neil Brown, 5-5, that
Yeah, it's I I don't think the Cincinnati win or Cincinnati, yeah, win is not going to
keep you
I don't
there.
think it's going to save his job, quite frankly. Like I think you
Mhm.
probably needed that Baylor win to save your job, and I don't you
Yeah.
didn't get it, obviously.
So yes, you've got Ryan Walters at 2. Who do you have
Ryan
at
Walters at
3?
two. At three, I have Sam Pittman, and it's not one I agree with, but it seems like it's just going to happen. Like I actually think Sam Pittman's done a damn good job coaching this football team this year, and I like maybe I'm coloring that with my bias that I like Sam Pittman as a coach. I just like Sam Pittman. I like his rack of ribs, but I also like that I also like the way he coaches a football team, and I think this team has shown that it's obviously at a talent disadvantage, but it's also spirited. They're also playing like hard for him. At the same time, they're putting up billboards outside of Fayetteville. They're putting like the fan base and boosters clearly want a change. And then like I think they also feel bad at it because like it's hard not to like Sam Pittman, but like when the fan base and the boosters are starting to call for it, And in the SEC, we kind of know where that's leading.
I have him coming up here in a little bit. The sentiment is kind of turning it against him because again, Arkansas is the biggest thing ever. You had a very winnable game versus Texas. You didn't take advantage of it. The reason I think that they'd keep him is because you've got La Tech coming to town and Sonny Cumbie is feeling the heat too. And
Yeah.
if those Bulldogs lose, they're not going bowling and they may have to make a move. But if you lose to La Tech, they're going to fire him on the spot
Oh
because
yeah.
do you win battle line? I go back and forth on it. Arkansas's best might be better than Mizzou's best right now, but Mizzou's a little bit more consistent. So I have Sam Pittman at 5.
Okay. Yeah. And I probably should have kept him lower on the list, but like I think it's more the fan sentiment thing. Again, I think they're going to beat La Tech, and I think that they're going to go bowling because of that. And like I think that's good enough at Arkansas, quite frankly, especially as you're trying to pick up the pieces because like it's been bad the past couple of years, and it's not bad right now. Like it's just not great. And so I don't
Heck,
know.
yeah, I'm right there. I'm right there with you. And at number 3, I've got a guy who might replace him because he might get fired, and that'd be Gus Malzahn. I think
Okay.
it's getting really bad there in Orlando.
No, it's not good. I do not have the Gus Bus on here, but like he's probably 6 or 7 if I did in my top 5.
They were 3-0. They were the mathematical favorite entering. I don't know if it was conference play. They may have had like the one win over TCU because they played Florida
Yeah.
later. And they
Yeah.
were like the favorite with their schedule to get to Arlington and win the Big 12. That may be a 4-win team. Like
Yeah.
it's it's not. I mean, I don't care if they have 5 wins now. It doesn't matter. Like this is a team right now where like you wanted this. You wanted to be Power Four so badly. You did. You took the first life raft you had, and now become the new West Virginia in your league. You're so geographically isolated. You
Mhm.
have some rivalries there. Yeah, you can probably say, okay, maybe West Virginia, okay, maybe Houston, maybe Cincinnati. Those are teams that you came in here with, where like you could do something with. But you're in Florida. Then also the fact that you know Mike Norvell's got some issues, and then obviously Billy Napier's safe. Miami's crystal ball in there with Mario. At some point with Gus Malzahn, I don't think he can be in a league where you need a scheme because he doesn't have one. He needs to go to an SEC team and coach somewhere with more boys where come on, boys, let's go. Just
Yeah.
no, no, like his offense is less adaptable than Lincoln Riley's. And at this point, I'm like, there's nothing to it. And you'll see what Rhett Lashley's doing at SMU with a better offense. Yeah, it's not going good for the Gus Bus, so I have him at 3.
No, I fully agree with everything you said. Like it's very clear that UCF, quite frankly, has experienced a big drop off from like I think like you look at Heupel, you look at oh God, Scott Frost and like all these guys that had success there, and it's like they're different brands than what Gus Malzahn brings to the table. They're trusting offensive minds to like really cater to what they already have in terms of a unique scheme that where like I think that's a really salient point by you in terms of like scheme matters a little more in the Big 12 than it does in the SEC, quite frankly.
You could certainly hurry up and run there at Arkansas. We'll see how that goes. At 4, I've got Lincoln Riley. I know you beat Nebraska. I feel that like the lack of people who showed up on time to this game, they've turned on him. It's just kind of more of like, okay, can we find our booster? If you would have lost to Nebraska, Jim Cohen may have fired him on the spot. And at this
Yeah.
point, you got to win one of your next 2 games. You're not beating Notre Dame. It's just not happening. And I think there's a chance that UCLA might get you. And first off, Deshaun Foster's not getting fired. I think that they're playing really hard for him. He is UCLA. He feels like they got to try to re. I kind of feel like, given what he had to do to have this team almost going to a bowl in year one, where people are like, yeah, UCLA is going to be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. There's a there's something to at least hang your hat on there. With Lincoln Riley, you've had every advantage, every resource, everything like that, and then you're just deplorably mid.
No, honestly, I was thinking about this. You know what UCLA is starting to feel like, and granted, Deshaun Foster has less of a coaching pedigree than this guy did, but like, does isn't UCLA with how spirited they're playing, how hard they're playing, and like how dangerous they do kind of feel down the stretch? Doesn't it remind you a little bit of Kenny D at our Arizona State last year? Like it
Yeah,
reminds me of Dillingham in his first year at alma mater last year, where yeah, Arizona State wasn't good. UCLA is not good, but like you can see the groundwork being laid to where this is probably going to work long term.
as long as you keep Eric Bieniemy, he would do that too. If Deion Sanders ever left Colorado, maybe he goes and takes over at some point. I feel
Yeah.
like that Eric Bieniemy's opportunity to be a head coach is in the college realm, and I think it'll work just because I think the motivation sort of factor, and people will say like, "Oh, you're sweaty" or whatever. And it's like, no, he just wins, and he schemes up pretty good stuff, but yeah,
And he
Lincoln Riley,
sweats.
he sweats. Me too. Like I sweat. I'm notorious sweater. I'm notorious SWEAT. Notorious sweat. So who do you have it for?
At four, I've got Tom Herman. And dude, FAU's in a bad spot, brother. The piss is not hydrated. Like we're not doing well with the Owls right now. And like I think there was a way for Tom Herman to keep preaching, I know what I'm doing at this level. I can get us there. I think that point is past. I don't think anyone believes that at this point. So I don't think Tom Herman's gonna have a job at the end of the season.
I think the P that he keeps saying this is really clear. The players are just pouring ever clear in there.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, if I really kicked this out further to like G5, he might have actually been one or
Yeah, I mean
two.
he's
But
up
and
there. It's not good. He's gone.
then I've got Sam Pittman at 5. Did you say you're 5 already?
I did not. I have Loxley at five.
I was thinking
Um,
about him too. Yeah.
yeah, like I'm torn because I don't. Unlike Sam Pittman, where I believe in Sam Pittman, I'm not sure Arkansas and the boosters believe in Sam Pittman. I don't believe in Mike Loxley, but I think the boosters might. So I don't know if he's actually going to get fired. But like, I think Loxley is a great coordinator. I think if Loxley were to get fired, like he would catch on at another big P4 program as a coordinator or an analyst or somewhat some role and would really help that program.
Georgia.
Honestly, Georgia, bring him to Georgia. Honestly, I could see Sark bringing him in as like some offensive assistant because that's what Sark does. Sark is kind of taking over the Nick Saban school of rehabilitation for these coaches. So like I can see him catching on, but like it's the same thing with Maryland over and over again. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills with it, and it's driving me insane. Like they are 1-6 in Big Ten play. How many times have we seen this?
I know. I feel like if he gets like he'll be an OC on Georgia or Texas or Ole Miss or Oregon because there will be like Charlie Rice Jr. could get a head coaching job. Will Stein could get a head coaching job. Mike Bobo cannot, and I don't really know what to make of AJ Milwee. He's Arch's guy, but kind of right there with you with Maryland a little bit too. If they do fire him, I got the perfect head coach to hire.
Who you got?
How about get a guy who's doing stuff in the same state? Let's get Todd Monken.
Oh, like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's what I would do because like Monken's like, okay, like you either coached out of the Browns and I'd rather coach Maryland.
Wouldn't we all? Wouldn't we all?
Yeah, that was good. I feel like we got to put some people on the hot seat, but I got a question for you, Cody. Let's do some Du Hast.
Oh, ooh. Always get tingly on the new highs.
The Andy Staples of the world changed my perspective on here. And Du Hast, Cody. Does Texas deserve to make the playoff?
Gonna do Host with one S and say yes as of now. If they lose to Texas A&M, that case becomes a lot more difficult to make. I still think they're better than Texas A&M, quite frankly. I I don't know where this overinflation of Texas A&M is consistently coming from. Is it the LSU game? Because LSU is not a top 25 team anymore. I'm not sure it's that impressive. Then you look at they lost to Notre Dame. Like I think Texas's defense is going to be able to control this game. You look at what South Carolina did to Texas A&M. I think Texas can do something similar to that, quite frankly. And so like I come down on Texas A&M where I just don't think they're that good. But like that will be a quality win for Texas. And like if you get to the SEC championship game, you're basically a lock if you're Texas at that point. Like for Texas specifically, you're a lock to make the college football playoff if you get in there. So like I just don't think that I think Texas has one game that matters. I said that earlier talking about the Arkansas game. Like that game meant more to Arkansas than it did to Texas because there's one game that matters and it's the Texas A&M game for Texas.
Yeah, I feel like you got the right level ahead here. It's Du Hast with one S. for now. You have to beat A&M. If you don't deserve to go to Atlanta, and you're
Yeah.
not going to win. If you lose to A&M, you're going to lose to Alabama. You're going to lose to Georgia again in the rematch, and then you don't deserve to be in there because you've got nothing of quality. But if you beat A&M, that will still be viewed as a quality win. And but the one thing I would say though is like if you were to lose to Alabama or Georgia in the SEC championship, however that would work out after beating A&M, it's close. It's very close. And I would think they would get in because at that point, like, look, I don't think Georgia or Texas is stealing each other's bids. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, one team's success isn't going to hurt the other.
Yeah.
It's like they're both pretty much in at that point. I think the Tennessee of it all, like, but Tennessee may get left out for having a similar record, but then they'd have better wins. It's so weird. But then again, then you have the extra quality point there. Basically, Texas just doesn't need to lose another game because if they lose another game, then we're gonna have to really discuss them.
Yeah, like I think I'm not as dubious as you are of what the SEC championship game would mean because like if Texas beats Texas A&M, they're at worst going to be ranked 3 in the college football playoff rankings, and I have a hard time imagining them with a loss to Alabama or Georgia lose like and adding that win over Texas A&M. I have a hard time seeing that drop them basically 8 spots or 9 spots to where you'd be out of the field.
Oh, they will drop an SEC loser like that. I've seen it before, but they'll see it again.
It's in,
Welcome to the show, brother.
but here's the thing. As opposed to Alabama or Georgia losing that, that would still just be Texas's second loss, where it would be the third loss for either of those two teams. And like I think that does matter quite a bit. Like I think it would basically drop Texas down into this like cluster of two-loss SEC teams that we already have, essentially. Like you look at Alabama, you look at Georgia, you look at Ole Miss, and there's this cluster of two-loss teams, and Tennessee is right behind them. And like I think you just drop Texas back into there, and like neither of Texas' losses will be as bad as the Arkansas loss for Tennessee. So you're keeping them ahead of Tennessee. You're probably dropping them behind Georgia if Georgia even doesn't go to the SEC championship game, but like you're still keeping them in the field, in my opinion.
I think you got this perfect. It's like just because I'm dubious of Texas and you're a little dubious of Texas, not as much. The math is in their favor to make it in. Like if they lose, they don't deserve to get in. But like you just beat A&M and figure it out, and you should be okay.
Yeah, no, 100%. Let me flip a Duhas on you real quick because I spoke on this on Saturday night, obviously. And my take that a Big Ten team probably won't may not win the national championship, may not have the goods. Duhas or Duhas, can a Big Ten team win the national championship?
I'm gonna say do host 1S,
Hmm.
and there's only one team that can do it.
Is it Oregon?
No,
Oh, who
It's
is?
Ohio State.
Okay, okay. I like it.
I think that Penn State just Penn State's going to lose right away. Indiana doesn't have the horses either. I kind of feel that the I just feel like there's a little bit more depth there with Ohio State that can sustain the beating of what a playoff run could do.
Hmm.
Oregon, it's just if you have one bad game from Dylan Gabriel, you can't overcome that. I feel if Will Howard plays poorly, you can still give the ball to Judkins or Henderson and still win. I just feel that like Ohio State, I love. I'm going to say they're my favorite, my pick right now to win a national championship, but like they're the one outlier with all this. Again, they're the most battle tested team in the Big Ten. So I would say, again, if the Big Ten is going to have a national champion, it's probably going to be Ohio State. It could be Oregon. It's not going to be the other two.
I think that's probably fair. And I think like with Indiana, like I love this team. I think they're very good. I think where I come down to it is unless you upset Ohio State and then upset Oregon and like get a bye, you've got to win 4 straight games at a talent disadvantage in every single one of them. That's just not like that's really hard for me to buy into. And like I love Coach Sig. I think he can win a playoff game. I think he can upset someone in the playoff. But like I just like winning 4 straight to win a natty seems a little far-fetched to me for the Hoosiers. I like I know cast some doubt on how I feel about this. I still have to go do Haas 1S with it, but like I think with Ohio State, I think what worries me is exactly what I was talking about. Whether it's 3 wins they have to get or 4 wins, like that ceiling. If you get four teams' best shots, is Ohio State's floor high enough to withstand all those best shots if you not, like don't have the same ceiling that Ohio State does, especially when you're talking about like a Georgia. If you get Georgia's best shot in your Ohio State, I don't it's really hard for me to see that really coming down Georgia's way. And I think Oregon's in the same boat, but like there's also the chance that you don't get every team's best shot. Like you're going to get their best effort, but best shot and best effort are not the same thing.
Yeah, I look at Oregon, I'm like, I think they're going to be the only undefeated team left heading into like the playoff
Yeah.
or something like that. But even at that point, I'm like, be a really bad time to lose your first game, and I'll just leave it at
Yeah.
that. And it's not really a bad time to go from your fourth topic to your fifth topic, but even though the fifth topic is called 4 for 4. Yeah, let's do that right real quick. This is going to be fun. This is a brainchild for you. Maybe I ruined it a little bit, but each Power Four league's biggest threat to steal a bid or steal a seed. Maybe the way we could do that better is like this team's going to be overseeded and this team's going to bid steal. So let's go with the ACC and kind of see where your head's at with that.
So I think like the ACC was honestly the easiest one because there's really only one team that qualifies for it, and it's Clemson. And basically, if Miami loses another game, Clemson gets in, and that's what it boils down to. And like Clemson's pretty far out of the top 12 right now. So like in terms of bid stealing, they are the closest thing to it. Like in theory, you could call SMU a bid stealer, but honestly, what's probably going to happen is they're just going to swap spots with Miami if they were to win the ACC championship game if things hold out. So like I'm not really going to call them a bid stealer at this point. Clemson's the team that could be like is the only team that's still alive. And the really fortunate thing for Clemson that they have working in their favor, their ACC schedule is done. They don't have any more trip up spots in the ACC. You play Wofford and you play South Carolina, but that South Carolina game doesn't. It has nothing to do with what's going to happen in the ACC championship and your playoff viability through that avenue.
Yeah, Clemson's probably the best contender to bid steal because as much as I think SMU kind of would be because of how the playoff committees value them, they'll go up and they'll go up fairly. And I think you're spot on there. In terms of being overseeded, I think Miami could be really overseeded. I feel that
Oh yeah.
like them winning the ACC championship is not the same as SMU winning it, is kind of what I got to. It's like with SMU winning, it's like, okay, you've earned your way in here. Yes, the BYU loss doesn't look as good because they lost, but like you went out there and you clobbered Pitt. You went out there and you've handled business in the ACC play. Whereas Miami is like you play with your food, you lost to Georgia Tech. What's your good win? Louisville, oh, they've got 4 losses now. So I
Yeah.
think there's a chance that Miami could be overseeded. Big Ten. Okay. I don't know if this really qualifies, but we're gonna put a square peg in a round hole like we're Mario Cristobal. Let's go.
So I went with Penn State. And the reason I went with Penn State is because in the world where Penn State could still make the Big Ten championship game, in that world, you would probably be knocking Ohio State out of the college football playoff because for that to happen, what you would need is Ohio State to beat Indiana this week and then lose to Michigan. And if that loss to Michigan would take Ohio State out of the Big Ten championship game, and you would have a loss to Michigan. So, like, what do you do there? That's going to put Penn State, if they beat Minnesota at Minnesota and then beat Maryland at home, which they're going to be favored in both of those games. Like, they could lose them, but they are going to be favored in both of those games. And you win those 2 games, you're playing Oregon for the Big Ten championship. If you then win, or if you then lose the Big Ten championship game to Oregon, you're still probably in the college football playoff as the Big Ten loser. And Ohio State has the head to head over you, but they also have a way worse loss than you on on their resume. So like I'm calling them a bid thief because there's a chance in the world where Penn State gets to that point, it really means Ohio State is going to get knocked out because of that.
Yeah, I think Penn State's the one that could steal someone's seed. I feel like the whole
Yeah,
like
that's probably a better way to say it.
11 and 1 like ability to like okay, you got to win Minnesota and if you beat Minnesota and Maryland unless Ohio State craps the bed, you're done and you're going to be like the 7 seed. And at that point the 10 seed between Alabama, Ole Miss, and Georgia is going to smoke you because that's just how that's going to go at your place and it's going to be awful. But
Yeah.
this is false start. I would say as much as I hated to do this, Indiana's got a little bit of this too, because like there could be like the whole, oh, they lose 51 to 10 to Ohio State, and then they beat Purdue. They don't go to Indy, they're 11 and 1, and then they play their first round game, and then they lose the same sort of way to like Ole Miss or something. Like there could be a point where like, ah man, we really bought into the narrative a little bit way too much. That would be more kind of in retrospect. But like
Yeah.
they would have earned their way in. But it's definitely between Penn State and Indiana because Oregon's hasn't lost yet, and Ohio State's played a really tough schedule.
Yeah, and their one loss is to Oregon. So like,
Yes.
it's they've done what they're supposed to this point.
All right, Big 12. Where you at? Where you at with this?
Oh, this is our boy Kenny D again, baby. This is the Arizona State Sun Devils because they are not out of the Big 12 title race right now. And like if BYU drops another game, Arizona State is in the Big 12 championship game with Colorado.
Mhm.
And that is Arizona State, yes, they're cracking the AP top 25, but like that's a bid steal. If they were to beat
Yes.
Colorado, if they were to beat whoever they were to beat, like there's avenues still for this team to get in. And if they got in and won the Big 12 championship, that's a bid steal, like hands down.
I was telling the Arizona State podcast, I'm like, because you beat K-State. If you beat BYU this week, I kind of wish that game was later. That would have been the one we would have done. Like that one that
Yeah.
so I looked at the schedule like, ah. But if you beat BYU and then you beat U of A, who's having a really rough year under Brent Brennan, um, you're going to be playing Colorado. And if you win the pregame, you will bid steal. And I don't think you'd be the 4 seed. You'd probably would be like 12.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Shouts to Boise State, the number 4 seed in that scenario.
And on that other note, Colorado might be overseeded. Like I feel like they would be a top four team, but I would sit there and like in reality, if they went 10 and 2 and they beat, they won their two remaining games and they beat Arizona State or BYU, you'd be like, okay, that's really probably the eighth best team in the country, but they're going to be seeded three.
Yeah, 100%.
And then Texas. Woohoo! That's my team for the SEC. I think they're going to be overseeded because they haven't played anybody.
I mean, fair. I will say one thing that stands out to me with Texas that is just frankly not their fault is like you look at okay, we value teams that play a tough team in the non-conference. When you scheduled Michigan at the Big House, that game looked like it was going to be a
Oh
hell of a
yeah.
test. And like they can't help the fact that Michigan just pissed down their leg all season. Like that's not Texas's fault. They also dominated in that game like they should have. And like I will say like this isn't Texas playing a soft schedule. It just had like intending to play a soft schedule, I should say. And the same goes for Red River and Oklahoma. Like, you can't handle Oklahoma just, again, pissing down its leg. I have A&M as the bid stealer here
Yes.
because, as I mentioned earlier, what has A&M like actually done this year? Your best win is over LSU, and that's what kind of vaulted you back into this conversation. And like, does that mean anything? You beat a team that's now unranked. Granted, you beat the dog crap out of them, but like that's like your best win at this point. You have a loss to Notre Dame. I don't know, man. I just have a hard time like getting there with A&M right now.
Yes, they would be my bid stealer. I would say Texas is overseeded, so I kind of had like two with the different stuff. If A&M stole a bid, they'd be stealing essentially like Texas's bid. Maybe he's taking it away from Alabama, keeping Tennessee out. I kind of
Yeah,
feel that Georgia and Ole Miss are pretty much okay regardless of what A&M wants to do. And we're making okay time, but let's make even better time. Let's do some time for some pour one out and some bowling, 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 bowling. Let's do
let's
that.
do it, baby.
All right. So looking at the sheet here, we had one, two, three, four, five, six, seven teams we got pouring out for, and one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10, 11 teams that are going bowling. So
Oh, baby.
let's pour one out for Ball State. Yes, they fired Mike New. They got started new with somebody not named New, and this is false start.
That was wonderful. Love it.
Got to pour one out for Central Michigan. They may have jumped the shark with Jim McElwain.
Oh, the oh the chips. Yeah, tough. It's honestly a tough week for the Mac and Portland out, frankly.
Yeah, a lot of chaos there on Tuesday and Wednesday night. I'm gonna pour one out for the Charlotte 49ers.
Ugh,
Biff, I hope you survive, man, but we're gonna still name the Sleeveys in your honor no matter what happens.
tears down my meat sleeves. God damn.
Just called sweat, brother. Either way. Are you using your shoulder as a tissue? No. Pour one out for the Florida International Panthers. What's the anti no Dale?
Yeah, speaking of hot seat, Mike McIntyre,
Pour one out for the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. They lost to Utah State in the snow. That sounds like hell.
I mean, what do you expect from Hawaii in that spot, brother? Like, come on.
Pour one out for the San Diego State Aztecs. Maybe Sean Lewis was the problem in Colorado.
It's entirely possible. I'm still high on Sean Lewis long term. Like I still think that this can work. I think he inherited a pretty bad situation with the Aztecs. But, my alarms are up a little bit more than they were.
And pour one out for the Tulsa Golden Hurricane. Kevin Wilson thinks a good head coach. That's a tough job, dude.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like it's not an easy place to win at all, quite frankly.
And do you want to be an ass or do you want me to be an ass?
I'll be an ass today. Let's do it.
Okay. The Fighting Butch Joneses, the Arkansas State Red Wolves are finally going.
Bowling, 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 bowling.
Dave Aranda is not getting fired because the Baylor Bears are.
Bowling, 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 bowling.
Your pick to win the MAC with their name in their name. The Bowling Green Falcons are.
They're orange instead of green, and they're also bowling, 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 bowling.
That is wild. They just mess with you. We don't have anything with green here. Pete Limbo and the Buffalo Bulls, they quite literally are rolling and
Bowling, 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 bowling.
oh God, Ooze Fest, man. That Pete Limbo, saint. My favorite one that we're doing right now, the East Carolina Pirates, after firing Mike Houston, they may have the right interim head coach. Don't know his name, but he's good. The East Carolina Pirates are.
Bowling, 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 bowling.
You could apply that in multiple ways in Greenville, North Carolina.
You damn right you can.
The other Miami is bowling. The Red Hawks and the MAC are
Bowling, 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 bowling.
really happy for you because this is the only one I think you really care about. Yes, Mac Brown is going to get some mayo poured on his head again. Maybe or maybe not, but North Carolina is.
Bowling, 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 bowling. Dude, shouts to the Tar Heels, man. I thought this team was dead to rights. Thought there was no chance of this happening. Here we are. Love to see it. Mac Brown can go out on a high note, but please retire. Holy hell, please retire.
They couldn't get the mayo out, and that's what happened to him. Oh no, he died. Now he just retired. Go off to the land of Burt Goodman.
That's right.
The team that beat Notre Dame early in the season, and I had them ranked at 12 because of the Boneyard and Thomas Hammock, the Northern Illinois Huskies are.
Bowling, 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 bowling.
I don't know how happy Scott Rogus is about this, but the Rutgers Scarlet Knights are better than the New York Giants because they, as a matter of fact, are going.
Sorry. I was laughing at Tommy DeVito. He's, this new Giant starting quarterback. Going to be an electric Thanksgiving Day game with the Cowboys and Giants between Cooper Rush and Tommy DeVito. Oh my God. But anyway, Rutgers is bowling, 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 bowling.
GJ Kinney, the Texas State Bobcats finally figured it out. I guess after losing to Arizona State, that was not a bad loss. That was just interesting. But the Bobcats are.
Bowling, 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 bowling.
And finally, Jed Fish and his visor are not going to Gainesville because Billy Napier is still going to keep his job. And I guess he's still going to keep his job there at UW, working for Pat Chun. That would be the Washington Huskies. They are.
Bowling, 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 bowling.
I can't believe they did. I'm so proud of them.
You missed another one that's close to my heart this week.
Did I really?
Broncos Big Bad Boys, believe are bowling, bowling, bowling at New
They
Mexico.
they might be. Let me see. New
They beat
Mexico.
Wazoo, which I did not foresee happening.
Did I miss one? Um, they are 5-6. They're
Oh,
almost
I
the
apologize. I apologize. Forgive me.
well,
They're
we
not
will
bowling. Sorry, Bronco.
appear outside. And speaking of peeing outside, this was episode 127 of False Start. You can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter or the X at Buhler118. You can follow Cody Williams at the Sizzle20. You can follow the show at CFB False Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. Here comes the hand. Bite the hand that feeds. Yes, please give us a 5-star review on Apple. Leave a review because we can give you a shout out if you just like it. We can't tell because we don't have the technology. We just have a podcast.
We do not have the technology. That's guaranteed.
Yeah, thank you for holding down the fort this week. I know you went solo like a cup twice for both Goldilocks and then for 3 yards into cloud of punt. I've been feeling like a real POS this past week, but
No worries, dude. I like one thing about me, I know how to talk, and I don't even have to be talking to anyone. I can just keep talking. So-
you're never bored when you have friends in your head, and this is false start.